Okay, so you've been driving around picking up all of these flyers for houses that you're interested in seeing. But you have the question, should I call the listing agent on the side or should I have my own agent? Well, that's a great question and the topic of today's video, all about buyer representation. My name's Jennifer Brickhouse, and I'm with Rose & Womble Realty in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Today, we are going to answer your questions about buyer representation. Before you call an agent to let you into a house, it would behoove you to think about who they are representing. So what happens if you call up the listing agent and say, hey, I'm interested in this property, can you show it to me? And that agent says, sure, I'd be happy to. Well, it all seems fine and great, but if you think about it a little bit further, it's important to realize the implications. That listing agent is in an agent-client relationship with the seller, and the agent owes the seller his or her fiduciary duty. I'm going to outline those for you right here. Now, as a result of those fiduciary duties, well, when that agent shows you the property and you go on and on about how much you love it and how it's just the perfect location for you and that you just got a new job and blah, 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 all of the things that people say when they're trying to make small talk and they're not thinking about what's coming out of their mouth. All of those things that the agent could be obligated to tell the seller. Those are all the things that could negatively impact your negotiating power down the road. Now, what if you love the house so much that the next day you come back and you say, hey, I've decided I really want to write an offer on it. Can we write an offer right now? And that agent will say, well, certainly, I'm happy to help you with that. Do you have an agent? And then you're going to say, no. And that agent will say, I can help you. Would you like me to help you? Now, it feels like a natural progression, and that agent would be entering a state called dual agency, where he or she is representing both sides of the transaction. Now, in order for that to happen, both sides, the buying side and the selling side, need to agree on it. There are a handful of states where dual agency is illegal, and Virginia is not one of them. Now, most agents are more than willing to be in the state of dual agency because, full disclosure, we get both sides of the paycheck instead of having to split the commission. However, as a buyer, there are some inherent risks when your agent is in a state of dual agency. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, dual agency happens all the time. And for many people, they're perfectly satisfied and get to the closing table and everything ends happily for all parties involved. I think it's important for people to pause and think about the implications before they run off into the sunset. The thing that I think is most important for people to really ponder is the fiduciary responsibilities of care. If an agent is representing both the seller and the buyer, he or she owes care to both sides. And what that means is advancing the agenda of that client. The place that people get hung up on is price. How can you advance the agenda of the selling side's desire and price and the buying side's desire and price? You can't, you're stuck in the middle. You may be able to provide educational services to both sides and give them both points to talk about and talk about the market statistics and the market trends so that both sides can come to their own conclusions. But if you were only representing the seller or only representing the buyer, then you would be able to be much more direct in the counsel that you gave. I'm not saying that dual agency can never work. It's just important to walk into this situation with your eyes wide open and decide if that is the kind of representation that best suits you and your needs. So now that we've talked about some of the risks of dual agency, let's talk about some of the positives of dual agency, because they are definitely there also. One of the advantages of dual agency is that there is only one agent doing the communicating between two parties in a transaction. With two different agents, you're going to have different personality styles, different negotiating styles, which are sometimes going to be in conflict, and that can lead to some communication difficulties between the two parties. Sometimes it's like the telephone game, where you hear one thing and it gets passed down and it gets passed down, and then by the time it gets to the end of the road, the message is distorted. When you only have one agent communicating between both sides, then chances are highly likely that the message to both parties will be very clear. Another advantage of dual agency is is that nobody knows that property better than the agent that is listing it. Another benefit of dual agency is that that agent has the ability to work the commission. If both sides are getting close to coming to an agreement, but they aren't quite there, that agent has the ability to decide to offer up some of his or her commission in order to bring the parties together. If there were two separate agents working the transaction, that likely would not happen. Another advantage of dual agency is that some agents just totally own certain neighborhoods. They have the lion's share of listings in that area, or they are very dominant in certain price points. So if a buyer is working with them and ends up interested in a property in that price point or in that neighborhood, then it may be pretty likely that that agent is already listing that property. Then that buyer would have to decide if they're uncomfortable with dual agency, they would have to be referred out to somebody else, which they may not like because they've already established a working, trusting relationship with the agent that they started with. Another benefit of dual agency is that the agent can soften the message. Sometimes if one agent, say, presents a repair request list from the home inspection, that's a mile long, the seller may look at it and be very offended and upset by it. If the dual agent in the middle is able to present that in a soft and understandable way, it can lessen the blow and keep everybody level-headed throughout the transaction. Well, I hope you found this discussion about the pros and cons of dual agency to be interesting and educational. If you could give me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. And if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. You can hit that notification icon down below, and that way you will be sure to get notified of all my new videos that I put out. I put out new videos every Wednesday about all things real estate in Hampton Roads. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.